A throne room the color of a bruise. Dark purple stone, climbing into a ceiling that has forgotten where the sky used to be. Thousands of warriors in burnished armor breathing as one. At the far end of the hall, a high dais. 3 columns of polished light stand on it. 3 princesses in heavy armor, every inch of them sharpened for war. Then, the shadow at the very end of the dais. A 4th figure nobody is looking at. Smaller, stiller. A simple cream dress where the others wear steel. White hair falling loose where the others wear it braided tight. Ink-stained fingers folded. A herald calls a name. A human soldier steps forward. In his uniform jacket just above the breast pocket, the corner of a book. The hall holds its breath. The soldier raises his eyes. He looks past the warriors, past the medals, past the emperor. He looks straight into the shadow. Part 1. The Crimson Nebula. Bled red light through the viewport. 6 months ago. Reed Holloway would never forget the color. The way it stained the bulkheads. The way it stained his hands. Wesley Tate was dying in his arms. Reed. A whisper. Wet. Reed. Look at me. He was looking. He was nothing but looking. The book. Wesley's hand fumbled at his chest plate. Take the book. Wes, don't. Take it. Reed took it. The Odyssey. Battered. Dog-eared. Pages soft from 1,000 reeds. Wesley had carried it through 3 deployments. Through the dust of Kessler. Through the ice of Tarnac. Through tonight. Read it for me. Wesley's voice was already going. Promise. I promise. Read it out loud sometimes, so I can hear. Wes, promise me out loud. I promise out loud. And then Wesley smiled. Because Wesley always smiled at the end of jokes. Even when there was no joke. Even when the joke was just being alive one more second. Then the smile went still. Reed sat there. The nebula bled. The ship screamed around him. Somewhere far away, a voice was calling his name through a comm bead pressed into his ear. The voice wanted to know if the plan had worked. The voice wanted to know if humanity had just saved the Luminarian Empire. Reed couldn't speak because his best friend was dead in his lap. Because the book was still warm from Wesley's chest. Because the plan had worked, yes. The plan had worked beautifully. The Luminarian fleet had been trapped. The enemy had known their patterns, their honor, their predictable, gorgeous, fatal way of fighting in straight lines. Reed had told his commander, use the radiation, hide, strike from 7 angles, think sideways. It had worked, and Wesley had died anyway. 6 months later, Reed was standing in a throne room the color of a bruise. Dark purple stone, veined with silver, glowing from within like something had been buried inside the walls a long time ago, and was still trying to get out. The ceiling went up forever. The pillars went up forever. Everything in Luminarian architecture went up forever. Because the Luminarians were a tall people, a pale people, a people the color of winter moonlight, a people who lived their whole lives with their heads tilted just slightly back, looking down at smaller things. Reed stood in line with 5 other human soldiers, dress uniforms, polished boots, hearts going faster than they ever went in combat. Because combat made sense. Combat had rules. This This was something else. Thousands of Luminarians filled the hall, warriors in burnished armor, nobles in robes the color of storm cloud, diplomats whose smiles meant 6 different things, every single one of them watching, every single one of them deadly. At the far end of the hall sat Emperor Kalon Miraveth, old, scarred, built like a war monument that had survived too many wars. His skin the same pale moonlight as all his people. His hair gone gray-white with age, pulled back tight. Beside him stood his daughters. Princess Seraphine, eldest, armor heavier than most men. A face like a blade that had been sharpened too many times. Princess Valus, middle. Twin daggers crossed at her hips. The kind of stillness that meant she was always one heartbeat from moving. Princess Listen. Third, bow across her back. Eyes that found you and stayed found. 3 warriors, 3 medals, 3 columns of polished light. And then, in the shadow at the very end of the dais, a 4th. Reed almost didn't see her. She was making herself small. He recognized that. He knew that posture. He had seen it on cousins at family dinners. He had seen it on school kids in hallways. He had seen it on his own mother once a long time ago, before she stopped trying to disappear and just started being herself. The 4th princess. She wore no armor. She wore a simple dress the color of cream. Her hair was white as paper, long, loose, falling around her shoulders the way nobody else's hair fell in this hall. Because nobody else in this hall had been allowed to forget themselves enough to leave their hair down. Her skin was pale even by Luminarian standards, almost luminous, almost like she had walked out of an old painting and forgotten to walk back. Her hands. Reed noticed her hands. Small, folded, ink-stained fingers. She had been writing recently. She had been writing right up until they made her come stand here. She had probably been writing when the summons came. She had probably set down her pen with a sigh. Her eyes moved. Everyone else stared straight ahead, like statues. Her eyes moved. They went up to the high windows. They went down to the floor mosaic. They went sideways to the column carvings. She was reading the room the way most people read books. Reed felt something turn over in his chest. The herald began to call the soldiers forward. "Captain Marcus Voss, step forward." A tall man broke from the line, strode to the foot of the dais, bowed. "For your service to the Luminarian Empire," the Emperor intoned, "name your reward." "A warship, Your Majesty, a frontier-class destroyer, to carry the name of my fallen brother." The crowd roared approval. The Luminarians loved warships. The Luminarians loved fallen brothers. The Luminarians loved names carved into hulls. "Granted. Next. Lieutenant Anya Park, step forward." She came forward, younger, sharper. "Platinum, Your Majesty. Enough to rebuild my city. Enough to put my mother in a house that doesn't leak when it rains." The Emperor nodded. "Granted. Next. Sergeant Eli Bender, step forward." Eli came forward, stocky, grinning a little because Eli was always grinning a little. "Land, Your Majesty, a piece of one of your colony worlds, where I can put down roots and forget I ever held a gun." "Granted. Next." A specialist asked for weapons technology. "Granted." A captain asked for a command position in the Joint Fleet. "Granted." 5 rewards. 5 thunderous approvals. 5 sets of eyes turning one by one toward the last human in line. Reed Holloway. He felt the eyes. He felt the weight. He felt the herald's voice begin to form his name. "Sergeant Reed Holloway, step forward." Reed stepped forward because he had practiced this walk. Because he had practiced it for 6 months. Because he had practiced it the night Wesley died, and every night since. Because he was about to do something insane. Inside his uniform jacket, the book, the corner of it just barely showing above his breast pocket. He had positioned it there carefully. He had thought about it for a long time. He had told himself he was crazy. He had told himself again. He had decided to be crazy anyway. He stopped at the foot of the dais. He looked up. Emperor Kalon stared down. Patient. The patience of a mountain. Princess Seraphine stared down. Proud. The pride of a sword. Princess Valus. Princess Lyson. The same. The same. And then, the fourth. Her eyes found his. For 1 second. Half a second. The smallest fragment of a second a heart can measure. She saw the book. The corner. Just the corner. Worn cloth binding. A faded letter O. Half visible above his pocket. Her face changed. Reed would remember that change for the rest of his life. He would remember it the way you remember the moment a sunrise becomes a sunrise, instead of just gray. Her mouth opened a tiny bit. Her eyebrows lifted. Her gray silver eyes went wide. For one held breath, she looked happy. Actually, genuinely, helplessly happy. Like a child who had just seen another child holding the same favorite toy. Then she remembered where she was. She lowered her eyes. She folded her hands tighter. She tried to disappear again. But Reed had seen it. And Reed was sure. "For your service to the Luminarian Empire," the Emperor said. "Name your reward." The hall waited. Reed spoke. "I choose Princess Elara Miraveth. I ask for her hand in marriage." The hall did not breathe. For one long second, the hall did not breathe. Then, the hall exploded. Luminarian warriors shouted. Luminarian nobles gasped. Somewhere, a goblet hit stone and rolled. Reed heard his ambassador's voice climb 3 octaves behind him. He heard his commander hiss his name. He heard a Luminarian guard's hand close around the hilt of a blade. Princess Seraphine's hand was on her weapon. "You mock us." Her voice cut. "You choose our weakest. You insult our house." "Stand down, daughter." Emperor Kalon's voice came soft. But the hall fell quiet anyway. Because soft from the Emperor was louder than shouting from anyone else. "You will explain yourself, Sergeant Holloway. I'll try your majesty. You have wealth available. You have land available. You have command available. You may have the best warship in our fleet if it pleases you. And yet, you choose her." Reed kept his eyes on Elara. She was shaking. Just slightly. Just at the shoulders. She was waiting for the punchline. She had decided this was a cruel joke. She had decided he was going to laugh in a moment and ask for the warship instead. She had decided the laughter would last her whole life. Reed would not laugh. "Your Majesty, I choose her freely. I choose her knowing what I am choosing." "And what do you believe you are choosing?" "Someone who saw the book." The Emperor blinked. The book. The book in my jacket, Your Majesty. The Odyssey. An old Earth poem. Everyone else in this room looked at the medals on my chest. She looked at the book. A murmur ran through the warriors. Confused. Almost offended. Almost amused. Princess Seraphine's hand was still near her weapon, but she was watching her sister now, watching Elara's face, watching whatever was happening there. You would marry a princess of Luminaria because she looked at a book, because she saw what nobody in this room saw, Your Majesty, including you. The hall hissed. A bad thing to say. A reckless thing to say. The Luminarian ambassador was definitely going to have words later. The human ambassador was already wearing the face of a man writing his own resignation in his head. But Emperor Kalen did not move. He studied Reed. He studied his daughter. He studied the air between them. Then he turned slowly to Elara. Elara. She lifted her head. Do you accept this? Reed watched her swallow. He watched her hands tremble. He watched her search her father's face for the right answer and not find it. If. Her voice was a thread. If it pleases you, Father. That is not what I asked. She blinked. I asked if you accept. A pause. A long, breathless pause. Reed could feel his own pulse in his teeth. Elara stopped. Started again. I accept. 3 words. 3 words she had probably never been asked for in her entire life. Not 3 words about her own future. Not 3 words about her own body. Not 3 words about anything. The Emperor nodded once. Slow. Then it is done. The human hero claims Princess Elara Miriveth as his prize. Let no one in this hall question it. The ceremony continued. Reed heard none of it. Because he was watching her. And she was watching him. And neither of them knew what had just happened. And both of them knew that whatever it was, it had just started. They were taken from the hall through a side corridor. Guards in front, guards behind. Servants whispering as they passed. Reed did not look at the whispering. He had given up on caring about whispering somewhere around hour 2 of being a soldier, but Elara cared. He could feel her caring. He could feel her shrinking inside her cream dress with every passing servant. He had to fight the urge to step closer to her, to put himself between her and the eyes, because he did not know her yet, because he did not have the right yet, because that kind of protection was a thing you earned. They reached a small private chamber, wood-paneled, warm. A fire in the hearth, a pitcher of water, 2 cups, a bowl of dark Luminarian fruit. Someone had prepared this. Someone had known. Someone had known exactly how to give 2 new strangers a room with nowhere to look but at each other. The guards closed the door. Silence. Elara stood with her back nearly against the far wall, her hands twisted in front of her dress. Reed stayed by the door. He did not move closer. Princess, please. What? Do not call me that. Not in here. She did not look at him. I am so tired of being called that. Okay. A long pause. Elara, then. Elara. He waited. She still would not look at him. Was this a joke? Her voice was so small. Please tell me. If it was a joke, I will. I will find a way. I just need to know. It was not a joke. You could have had a warship. I know. You could have had a planet. I know. You could have had anything in this empire, and you chose. She finally looked at him. You chose the embarrassment. Reed felt something crack down the middle of his chest. Quietly, like the first thaw of a frozen pond. You are not an embarrassment. Everyone in that hall thinks I am. Everyone in that hall is wrong. She laughed. There was nothing happy in it. There was nothing happy in it at all. You do not know me, soldier. No. Then how? You read Homer. Her face changed again. The same change. The same sunrise. How? She stopped. How do you know I? Because you saw the corner of the book, and your whole face lit up, and then you tried to hide it. And nobody hides happiness like that, unless they have been hiding it their whole life. She put her hand over her mouth. You saw. I saw. She turned away from him, quickly. Her shoulders shook. He could not tell if she was laughing or crying. He suspected she could not tell either. 5 years. Her voice came muffled through her fingers. 5 years I have been reading him. 5 years. In the archives. By myself. And nobody noticed. Nobody noticed. Reed pulled the book out of his jacket. Slowly. Like a man approaching a deer. He held it up so she could see it when she turned around. She turned around. This belonged to my best friend. Reed's voice was rough. He had not expected his voice to be rough. He cleared his throat. He died 6 months ago. The night before he died, he was reading me a passage. He said the part where the dog recognizes Odysseus was the best part of any book ever written. Argos. Reed looked at her. The dog's name. It was Argos. You know. I told you. I have read him. She came closer. One small step, then another. Her ink-stained fingers reached out, did not touch the book, hovered near it, pulled back. May I? It is yours if you want it. What? I have 3 more copies at home. Take this one. No, I could not. Elara. I could not. Take it. He would want you to have it. He liked people who could see things. She took the book. Carefully. With both hands. Like an injured bird. She opened it. Reed had written in the margins. Notes. Underlines. Wesley had written in the margins too. 2 handwritings. 2 friends. 2 whole lives folded into the white space around an ancient poem. She read the first underlined passage. Her eyes filled. What is your favorite part? She did not look up. Truly, when the dog knows him. Even though everyone else thinks he is a beggar. Even though he has been gone 20 years. Even though he is wearing rags. The dog knows him. The dog sees who he really is. Her tears spilled. What is yours, Elara? When Penelope tests him with the bed. Tell me. She wants to be sure it is really him. So she tells the maid to move the bed out of the bedroom for the night. And he gets angry. Because their bed was carved into a living olive tree. The bed cannot be moved. And the moment he tells her the bed cannot be moved, she knows. She looked up at him. She knows it is him, because he remembers their secret. Reed felt his throat close. Yeah, that is my favorite part. That is a good favorite part. Why? Because. He almost could not get the word out. Because you knew about the book, and nobody in there did. And now I know. And nobody can take that back. She nodded, slowly, like she was learning how to nod for the first time. Reed, Yes. What happens now? Whatever you want to happen. Do not say that. Why? Because nobody has ever said that to me, and I do not know what to do with it. He almost laughed. He almost cried. He did neither. He took a slow breath. You come back to Earth with me, if you want to. You meet my mother. You meet our libraries. You meet a planet that values people who read. And if at any point you do not like it, you tell me, and I will bring you home. This is not home. I know. This has never been home. I know. A long pause. I will come with you. You will? I have nothing to lose. Elara. And maybe something to gain. She held the book tighter. Maybe something to gain. She did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed in her old quarters, with Wesley Tate's Odyssey in her lap. The fire in her hearth had burned down to embers. The palace was quiet, the kind of quiet that only happens in very old buildings, full of very old grief. She thought about being 10 years old. She had not let herself think about being 10 years old in a long time. She had been a slight child, pale, even for a Luminarian, already too quiet. The day of the combat trials, her nurse had braided her hair tight against her skull because the instructors hated loose hair. Her sisters had been ready for hours. Seraphine had been ready since dawn. Valus had been ready since birth. Lyson had been ready before she could walk. Elara had stood in the training arena, practice drone humming in front of her. Attack the drone princess. Instructor Vex, cold-eyed, bored before she had begun. The drone was small. The drone was harmless. The drone had 3 soft padded prongs that would tap you and score points. The drone was not even alive. But Elara had looked at it, and Elara had thought, it is so small. It is so alone. It is bobbing in the air all by itself, waiting for me to hurt it. She had hesitated. The drone had tapped her shoulder. Score. Again, the drone had bobbed back, patient, pathetic, almost apologetic. Elara had thought. It looks sad. It looks like it does not want to be here either. We are both small, and we are both being made to do this. I do not want to hurt the thing that is also being made to do this. She had hesitated again. The drone had tapped her chest. Score. Again, princess. 3 times, 5 times, 12 times. By the end of the trial, she had been crying silently the way 10-year-olds cry when they are not allowed to make noise. Her sisters had watched from the gallery. Her father had watched from the gallery. Instructor Vex had not even bothered to take notes after the 7th round. His report had been 1 sentence. No killer instinct. No warrior spirit. Unsuitable for military service. That night, her father had not spoken to her at dinner. That had been the beginning. 12 years of beginnings. 12 years of her father not speaking to her at dinner. 12 years of her sister's medals on the wall, and none of hers, because there were none of hers. 12 years of being invisible. Until the day she had wandered into the Imperial Archives. She had been crying, 11 years old, lost. She had walked for what felt like hours through corridors she did not recognize. She had ended up in a part of the palace where nobody went anymore. A heavy wooden door, an old smell, paper and dust, and something that smelled like time itself. She had pushed the door open. Inside, shelves taller than her father. Shelves taller than her father's tallest soldier. Shelves and shelves and shelves, stretching back into dim lamplight. A small old man at a small old desk had looked up. "Hello, little one." She had stood in the doorway, snot running down her face, hair coming loose, eyes red. A princess with no business being a princess. "Are you lost?" His voice was gentle, the gentlest voice she had ever heard in her life. She had not been able to speak. "It is all right." He had set down his pen. "It is all right, child. Come in. Close the door. Nobody comes here. Nobody will see you cry." His name was Master Aylwin. He was old enough that he had been retired from active service before her grandfather had been born. He had become an archivist because nobody else wanted to be one. He had spent 60 years among the records of every species the Luminarian Empire had ever met. He had read more than anyone alive, and he was the first person in Elara's life who had ever looked at her without disappointment. "Sit down, princess. I am not a princess in here. You are exactly the right kind of princess in here, the kind who reads." He had given her a cup of tea. He had given her a book. The book had been about Earth. She had taken it home that night under her dress. She had read it by candlelight. She had stayed up until her eyes burned. She had read about a small blue planet whose people made paintings and music and arguments and bread, whose people were not all warriors, whose people in fact mostly were not warriors at all, whose people made things. She had gone back to the archives the next day, and the next, and every day after that, for the next 11 years. Master Aylwin had taught her the language file system. He had taught her how to translate. She had spent the early years on Mandarin and Spanish and Russian. By 13, she could read 3 Earth languages. By 16, she could read 10. She had discovered Earth's poetry by accident at 17. She had found Homer that same year. Homer had broken her open in a way nothing else had. She had read him obsessively for the 5 years since, while her sisters won medals, while her father forgot her name at state dinners, while the palace whispered weakest princess and useless princess and forgotten princess. She had been building something, in the dark, by herself. Nobody had known. Until tonight. Until a soldier had walked into the throne room with a book in his pocket and looked at her like she was the only person in the building. She was still sitting on the bed with the Odyssey in her lap when the knock came. Quiet. 3 taps. "Come in." The door opened. Princess Seraphine stood in the doorway. She did not wear her armor. Elara had not seen Seraphine without armor since they were small. Seraphine wore a long gray robe. Her hair was down. She looked younger. She looked like a person, and not a sword. "May I come in?" "Yes." Seraphine closed the door. Elara felt herself stiffen, because Seraphine had not been in this room since they were children. Because the last time Seraphine had been in this room, Elara had been weeping after a combat trial. Because Seraphine had stood in the doorway then, too. And Seraphine had said, "You embarrass us, Elara." And Seraphine had left. 12 years ago. 12 years. Seraphine stopped. Started again. "I came too." She crossed to the small writing desk by the window. Elara watched her. She did not understand what was happening. Seraphine put her hand on a small drawer. The bottom drawer. The drawer Elara had locked the day after Master Aelwyn died of old age, and had not opened since. How? Elara stood up. How do you know about that drawer? Because I am your sister. You have not been my sister in 12 years. That landed. Seraphine flinched, just slightly, just at the eyes. I deserved that. What are you doing? Seraphine pulled the drawer open. Inside, a stack of paper. Maybe 400 pages. Handwritten, half bound with a leather thong. The edges yellowed. The ink faded along the older pages. Elara felt her knees fail. She sat down on the bed. How long? I have been reading them. Since you were 15. 7. 7 years. You. I knew the luck. I taught you the luck when you were 6. You forgot. I did not. Elara could not speak. Seraphine sat down on the edge of the bed. Carefully. Like the bed might break. Like Elara might break. Her warrior hands looked strange, folded in her lap, without a weapon. I read everything. Seraphine's voice was very low. Your analyses of the Kelvin Collective. Your essays on the Draxian succession crisis. Your translation of that Earth philosopher. The one who wrote about cave shadows. Plato. I read that one 3 times. I did not understand it the first 2 times. The 3rd time I cried. Elara could not breathe. I read your notes on Earth's 20th century poets. I read your reconstruction of the Lost Tauran prayer cycle. I read everything in that drawer. Twice. Some of it 3 times. You. I hid them. Father searches your room sometimes. Did you know? I made sure he never found that drawer. Why? Because I was afraid of him. You are afraid of nothing. I was afraid of him. Seraphine's voice cracked. The crack was small. The crack was real. I was afraid of what he would do. To you. If he saw what was inside your head, he would have called it betrayal. He would have called it cowardice in a different shape. He would have sent you away. And I? She stopped. She put her hand over her mouth the way Elara had earlier. The same gesture. 2 sisters with the same gesture for the same grief. And I could not stand the thought of you being sent away. Elara was crying. She had not known she was crying until she felt it on her chin. You read them. I read them, Elara. You never said. I never said. Because I am a coward. Because I have medals from 12 campaigns, and I could not say to my own father that my sister is the smartest person in this empire. Because I let them call you useless for 12 years, while I knew. Seraphine, I am sorry. Seraphine, I'm so sorry. The warrior princess of Luminaria put her face in her hands and wept. Quietly. Disciplined. The way warriors weep when they finally do. With no sound. With shaking shoulders. Elara crossed the small space between them. She put her arms around her sister. The first time in 12 years. Maybe the first time ever. Seraphine clung to her. Hard. Hard enough that Elara felt the bruise begin, and did not care. I should have spoken. You spoke tonight. Tonight was too late. It was not. It was. It was not. Elara pulled back, held her sister's face the way a mother holds a child's face. It was not Seraphine. Listen. He saw the book. The soldier. He saw the book, and he saw me. And now you are here. And now you have told me. And maybe, Maybe I have been seen twice in one day, after 12 years of not being seen at all. Seraphine breathed out, shaky. I read your essay on humans, the long one, about how their literature is their secret weapon. Yes, I thought you were wrong when I read it. And now there is a human downstairs who chose you because of a book. Yes, you were not wrong. No, I was wrong. A long pause. Take them with you. Seraphine pushed the stack of pages across the bed. Take all of them. To Earth. Do not leave them here. I will not be able to keep them safe forever. Seraphine, take them. Elara took them. 400 pages. The weight of 12 years. Outside the window, the first pale Luminarian dawn was beginning to push at the dark. Seraphine stood up. You will come back. I do not know. You will come back. To visit. Sometimes. You will tell me what Earth is like. You will tell me what their poetry is like. You will tell me about the small things. The food. The animals. The trees. I will. Promise. I promise. Seraphine touched her face. Just once. Just for a second. Be brave, little one. Be braver than I ever was. She left. Elara stood in the middle of her own room with the stack of her own writing in her arms, and the Odyssey on the bed, and a window full of pale dawn. And she thought, something is starting. Something is starting. And I do not know what it is. I do not know what it is. And I am going to walk into it anyway. Because somebody saw me. Because somebody finally saw me. And tomorrow morning I'm going to a planet I have only read about. With a man who has only known me for one day. With a book in my hand. With 400 pages of myself in my arms. And whatever happens next, it will be the first thing in my entire life. That happened. To me. Because of me. Because I chose it. She sat down on the bed. She opened the Odyssey. She began to read. The first light of morning crept up the wall behind her. Slow. Patient. Kind. Like a thing that knew it had been waited for. A long time. Part 2. The USS Liberty pulled away from Luminaria at 5th bell. Elara stood at the observation port and watched her home shrink into a violet bead. Then a violet pinprick. Then nothing. She had never seen Luminaria from the outside before. She had never seen it small. It looked smaller than she had expected. Smaller than 12 years of pain. Smaller than a lifetime of being unseen. Smaller than she remembered when she was inside it. Reed stood 3 steps behind her. Not closer. He understood about 3 steps behind. He understood that some kinds of grief need a quiet witness. Not a hand. Not a hug. Just a witness. She turned around. It is smaller than I thought. Yeah. How long until Earth? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. You okay? I do not know. That is the right answer. She almost smiled. It was the smallest, almost smile in the universe. He counted it as a victory anyway. They settled into the rhythm of the ship. Reed's quarters were on deck 4. Elara's were across the hall. Small rooms. Bunks. A desk. A porthole. Nothing fancy. The USS Liberty was a transport, not a cruise liner. The crew was kind. The food was edible. The corridors smelled like recycled air and faint coffee, and the ghost of someone's grandmother's cooking from the mess hall 2 decks down. For the first 3 days, Elara barely left her room. She sat on her bunk with her 400 pages stacked beside her like a small wall. She read the Odyssey. She read it again. She marked it with a pencil Reed had given her. She wrote nothing. She felt too full to write. On the 4th day, Reed knocked. "Dinner. I am not hungry." "You are. Come on." "Reed." "Elara." A pause. "Okay." The mess hall was loud. Soldiers eating. The smell of bread and stew and something fried. Heads turned when she walked in. Of course they did. The white-haired princess in a borrowed gray sweater that was 3 sizes too big because Reed had given it to her, and she had not wanted to refuse. She froze at the door. "Hey!" Reed was already pulling out a chair at a small table by the wall. "Sit with me." She sat. A woman in uniform came over. 40s. Red hair. The kind of confident grin that probably ran in the family. "You must be Elara. I am Captain Maeve Donlin. Welcome aboard my ship." "Thank you, Captain." "Reed tells me you speak more than a dozen Earth languages." "Yes, ma'am." "Show off." Elara blinked. The captain laughed. "I am kidding, sweetheart. It is a joke. We tease each other on this ship. Get used to it." Elara tried. "I do not know how. You will learn. Reed will teach you. He is the worst at it. He will bring you up to speed." Reed threw a piece of bread at the captain. The captain caught it without looking and ate it. Elara stared. "This. She turned to Reed. "Is this allowed?" "On this ship it is. On Luminaria, you would be flogged." "Yeah, on this ship I get bread." She laughed. The laugh surprised her. It came out before she could stop it. It came out small and surprised and a little hoarse because she had not laughed often in her life, and the muscles were not warm. 3 soldiers at the next table looked over. The laugh. They smiled. One of them lifted his cup at her. Just a small acknowledgement. "Hello, princess. You are allowed to laugh in here." She did not know what to do with it, so she laughed again, harder, because she did not know what else to do. And the soldiers smiled wider, and Reed watched her, and Captain Donlin walked away grinning. And Elara thought, This is what people are like, when they are not afraid of each other. This is what people are like. Every night after that, they read the Odyssey together. Reed would come to her room, or she would come to his. They would sit on the floor with their backs against opposite bunks. They would take turns. One would read a passage in English. The other would read the same passage in Luminarian, translating as she went, because she had translated the whole thing once when she was 16, and the translation was still in her head. Sometimes they would stop and argue about a word. Cunning. That is the wrong word. Odysseus is not cunning. He is. She would search. Resourceful. Better. He is resourceful. He is also a little tired. Tired. Yes, he has been at war for 10 years. Then he is lost for 10 more years. By the time he gets home, he is 40-something years old, and he is so tired. Cunning is too sharp for that. Cunning is what you call a young man. He is not a young man anymore. Reed looked at her. The lamplight made her white hair almost gold. That is a good note. It is just a word. It is not just a word, Elara. It is just a word. It is how you see him. Most people see Odysseus as the hero. You see him as the tired man. That is not just a word. That is a whole way of looking. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. So she read the next passage. So they kept reading. On the 8th night, he told her about Wesley. They were sitting on the observation deck. Empty. Late. The stars going past at the slow speed of warp transit. Just shapes of light, slow as snow. She had asked. Quietly. Tell me about your friend. He had not answered for a while. Then he had said, Wesley Tate, 26 years old. From a town in Pennsylvania nobody outside Pennsylvania has ever heard of. His mom raised 5 kids on a school cafeteria salary. He was the youngest. He was the one who got out. He joined the army to get out. But he kept his books because he was not really an army kind of person. He was a books kind of person who happened to be wearing a uniform. You know that kind of person. Yes, every deployment he carried that copy of the Odyssey. Every single one. He had it in his pack at Tarnac. He had it under his pillow at Kessler. He read me passages on slow nights. He said books made us more than just soldiers. That sounds like him. You do not know him. I know him a little. Through the notes in the margins. Reed laughed. It was a wet laugh. Yeah, I guess you do. How did he die? My plan worked. The plan I came up with for the Crimson Nebula. We hit them from 7 angles. We won. But Wesley's shuttle took fire on the way back. He was alive when I got to him. He gave me the book. He told me to read it for him, out loud, so he could hear. You promised. I promised. Have you been reading it out loud? Not really. Read. What? Read it out loud now. He looked at her. Right now. Yes, we are sitting under the stars. He would like that. Read. He opened the book. He read. His voice broke a little on the second line. He kept reading anyway. Elara closed her eyes. The Luminarian sky never had stars like this. The Luminarian sky was always purple and always still. This sky moved. When he finished the passage, he was crying. Quietly. Not the kind of crying that needs help. The kind of crying that just needs to come out. She did not touch him. She just sat. After a long time, he said, Thank you. Wesley says you are welcome. He laughed. He cried harder for 1 second. Then he laughed again. The laugh and the cry got tangled up and became something else. Some third thing. Something Elara had never seen in Luminarian grief, because Luminarian grief was not allowed to laugh. She filed it away. She would write it down later, in her next page. The shuttle dropped through Earth's atmosphere on a Tuesday morning. Elara had her face pressed to the porthole. Reed was watching her face. The clouds. She had never seen clouds. She had read about clouds in many languages. She had not known until this moment that the descriptions had been failing her. Because clouds were not really white. Clouds were 100 kinds of white. Cream white, bone white, pearl white, stormy gray white. They rolled. They moved. They had insides like cathedrals. She could see all the way inside them, and the inside was lit up gold by a sun she could not see yet. Then they punched through, and there was Earth. Green, brown, blue. So much blue. She had read that the planet was mostly water. She had not understood mostly water until now. Mostly water meant the planet looked like an eye full of tears. Read? Yeah. It is. It is. Yeah. I have no word. Yeah. They landed at a small military airfield in Vermont. Northern New England. Pine trees pressing up against the tarmac. A small terminal building. A few jeeps. A few quiet officers who saluted Reed and looked respectfully sideways at the white-haired princess in his too big sweater. And then, standing by the railing in a long blue coat, a woman with gray hair pulled back, soft eyes, a face like worn linen, folded hands, a small expectant smile. Eleanor Holloway, 62 years old, Reed's mother, widowed 9 years, librarian for 38 years, gardener for 45. Quietly, ferociously herself. Reed walked toward her. Elara walked behind him. Slow. Suddenly afraid. Because mothers were not a thing she knew. Because her own mother had been dead since she was 3. Because she had read about mothers in books and seen them in old Earth films in the archives, and they were always either fearsome or absent, and she did not know which kind this one was. And she did not. She did not know how to be a daughter. Reed reached his mother first. Mom. My boy. She put her hand on his face, just held it there, her thumb against his cheekbone. She did not say anything for a long time. She just held his face. He closed his eyes. Then she stepped past him, right past him. She walked up to Elara. Elara could not move. Eleanor Holloway looked at her for one long second, reading her, the way Elara read rooms. Then she opened her arms. Come here, sweetheart. Elara did not know how to come there. Her body did not know. She stood frozen. Eleanor took one slow step forward. She did not grab. She did not lunge. She offered, like you offer your hand to a deer. It is okay, honey. Come here. You have had a long flight. Elara took one step, then another. Then she was in the woman's arms. Eleanor smelled like lavender and old books, and something else. Bread. She smelled like bread that had been baked maybe yesterday. Her coat was soft. Her arms were strong. The strength surprised Elara. The arms of a 62-year-old human were not supposed to be that strong. But they were strong. They held her like she had been being looked for. Welcome home, baby. Elara did not cry. She wanted to. She did not. She had not learned how to cry on cue yet. Luminarian girls did not cry on cue. They cried in dark rooms after locking the door. She would have to teach herself this new kind of crying later. But she held on. She held on for a long time. The house was small. That was the first thing she noticed. It was small the way Luminarian palaces were not small. It was small the way a heart is small, and yet holds everything. White clapboard siding, a porch with 2 rocking chairs, a red door, smoke coming from a chimney even though it was September and not cold yet. The smoke was for atmosphere. Elara would learn this later. Eleanor lit fires in September because Eleanor liked the smell of wood smoke. That was a reason. That was a complete reason. To do a thing because it made you happy was a complete reason in this house. Inside. Books. Everywhere. Every wall. Every shelf. Stacked sideways on top of the standing up ones. Stacked on the stairs. Stacked on the window sills. Stacked in baskets by the rocking chairs. A whole shelf of poetry by the kitchen door. A whole shelf of cookbooks above the stove. Field guides to birds and trees and mushrooms by the back door. Novels in the bathroom. Novels in the hallway. A book left open face down on the arm of the couch with a pair of reading glasses folded next to it. Elara stopped just inside the door. She put her hand on the door frame. She did not know she was crying until Eleanor said, "Oh, honey," and got her a tissue. "I am sorry." "Do not be sorry." Elara wiped her face. "I have read about houses like this. I did not know they were real." Eleanor put a hand on her shoulder. Light. Steady. "They are real, sweetheart. They are very real." Her room was upstairs. It had been Reed's sister's room when Reed had a sister before she grew up and moved to Boston with a husband and 2 children of her own and a job at a hospital. Eleanor had kept the room ready, the way some mothers do, the way some mothers cannot help doing. The bed had a quilt on it. Patchwork. Faded. Eleanor's grandmother had made it. The pieces were from old dresses. "This one was my mother's wedding dress." Eleanor pointed to a square of yellowed lace. "This one was my Aunt Margaret's. She was a terrible woman, but she had beautiful clothes." Elara laughed. She kept laughing in this house. Things kept being funny. She had not known things could be casually funny. "And this one," Eleanor pointed to a pale pink square. "This one I do not know. My grandmother just liked the color. It is beautiful. It is yours now." "What?" "The quilt. It is your—" "While you are here." "Mrs. Halloway." "Eleanor. Honey, call me Eleanor." "Eleanor, I cannot take your grandmother's quilt." "You can. You are. You are sleeping under it tonight. That is the end of that conversation." Elara looked at the quilt. She put her hand on it. She thought, "I have a quilt with a woman's wedding dress in it. I do not, but I do. I am borrowing one. I am borrowing one for as long as I am allowed to be here." She slept that night for the first time in 3 weeks without dreaming. The first morning, Eleanor woke her at 7. "Get up, sweetheart. We are making pie." "Pie. Apple pie. The apples are ready." "Apples?" "Yes, the apples. From the tree. The tree in the yard." "There is a tree in the yard." Eleanor laughed. "Oh, baby, there are a lot of trees in the yard." There were 5 apple trees. Old ones. Knotted. Thick. The branches heavy with red fruit. Elara stood under one and looked up, and the leaves moved, and the sun came through them in patches, and she thought, "This is what they meant. This is what the books meant by orchard." Eleanor put a basket in her hand. "Pick the ones you can reach. The ones higher up Reed will get later." "How do I know which ones?" "The red ones. They are all red. The red ones that come off easy. If you have to yank leave it, it is not ready." Elara picked apples. She picked them for an hour. She had never done a thing with her hands like this before. Her hands had touched paper and pens, and the spines of books and her own face when she cried. Her hands had not touched fruit. Her hands had not pulled life off a tree. Her hands had not been useful in a way that produced food. Her ink-stained fingers turned red with apple juice. She liked it. She liked it very much. Inside the kitchen, Eleanor taught her to peel apples, to core them, to slice them into thin half-moons, to toss them with sugar and cinnamon, to roll out a crust, to press the crust into the pie pan, to lay the apples in, to weave a lattice on top. Like this, Eleanor showed her. Quick fingers. Practiced. Over, under, over, under. Do not worry if it tears. The torn ones are the prettiest. Elara wove a lattice. It tore. She apologized. Eleanor laughed and said, "I told you, the torn ones are the prettiest. Look at it. It looks like real food. It looks like a real person made it. Perfect pies are sad pies." Elara stared at the torn lattice. Perfect pies are sad pies. She would write that down later. Sometime in the afternoon, she went outside alone. The rose garden was behind the house, a small fence of weathered cedar. 3 dozen rose bushes, some still blooming. Late September roses. Slightly tired. Still beautiful. Eleanor had been working on this garden for 45 years. There were varieties here Elara had never read about. There were varieties here that did not exist in any Luminarian archive. There was a deep red rose that smelled like cloves, and a pale pink rose that smelled like nothing at all, and a yellow rose that smelled like a memory. Elara could not place because the memory was not hers. She stood among the roses. She thought, "I am 22 years old. I am 22 years old, and I have just learned that a thing called a rose garden is real. I have just learned that a person can grow roses for 45 years, for no reason, for the reason of growing roses. I have just learned that there are people who measure their lives in rose seasons." She started crying. She did not know why. She did not know if it was happiness or grief or both. She suspected both. Eleanor came out and found her. Eleanor did not ask why she was crying. Eleanor just stood next to her and said, "This one is called Madame Hardy. She is a tough old girl. She has outlived 3 of my husbands." Elara blinked through tears. "How many husbands have you had?" "Only 1. I just like to tell the rose she has outlived 3. Elara laughed. She was home. The news came on a Thursday, 3 weeks into her stay. They were in the kitchen. Eleanor was making tea. Reed had a newspaper. Elara was reading aloud from a poetry collection because Eleanor had asked her to. The wall screen lit up. Breaking news. Vossari forces have crossed the Outer Rim boundary. 3 Luminarian colony worlds have come under attack. Casualty estimates ongoing. The Earth-Luminarian Alliance is in emergency session. Reed lowered the newspaper. "Mom, turn that up." Eleanor turned it up. The screen showed footage. Long range. Blurry. Vossari ships. Wedge-shaped. Asymmetric. Engines glowing the wrong color. They moved in patterns the Luminarian fleet had clearly not predicted, because the Luminarian fleet was firing at the empty spaces where the Vossari should have been. Elara watched. She knew this. She knew this attack pattern. She'd written about this attack pattern. The Vossari Diplomatic Codex. The section on Vossari military philosophy. She had built the analysis from fragmentary archive records left behind by a defunct Korin merchant guild that had traded with the Vossari 3 centuries ago. She had cross-referenced it with linguistic patterns in surviving Vossari trade contracts. She had concluded that Vossari combat was not actually warfare. It was a kind of ritualized argument. The Vossari attacked to make a statement. They withdrew when the statement was received. They did not fight to win. They fought to be heard. If you treated Vossari attacks as conversations, if you treated them as conversations instead of battles, if somebody could talk to them. She set down the poetry book. Read. Yeah, I know what they want. He looked at her. What? The Vossari. I know what they want. They are not invading. They are protesting. Elara, they are killing people. Yes, because nobody is listening. They have been trying to get our attention for a long time. The colony worlds they are hitting. Look at the map. Those are not random. Those are colonies on contested territory. Territory the Vossari claim by ancestral right. They are not invading our territory. They believe we have invaded theirs. Reed stared. How long have you known this? Years. Years. I wrote it down years ago. It is in my pages. Why did you not? Read. Who? Who in the Luminarian Empire was going to read it? Father did not even know I could write. Reed put his hand over his eyes. Okay, I need to. Wait. Eleanor had walked over to the table. She picked up her tea. Calm, like a woman who had been calm in many crises before. Sweetheart. Eleanor sat down. How sure are you? Very. Could you write it down, clearly, in English, for someone who is not you? Yes. How fast? By tomorrow morning. Eleanor nodded. My old friend Helen works at State. She used to be my carpool buddy when our kids were small. She is now an undersecretary. She owes me favors going back decades. You write it tonight. I will have it on her desk by lunch tomorrow. Eleanor. What? Why? Why what? Why do you trust me? Eleanor took a sip of her tea. She looked at Elara over the rim of the cup. Because I have been alive 62 years, and I have learned that the people who get told they are useless are usually the people who have been seeing things nobody else can see. And it makes everyone uncomfortable, and so they call those people useless to make the discomfort go away. Elara could not speak. You are not useless, sweetheart. You are inconvenient. There is a difference. The world calls them the same thing. They are not. She drank her tea. Now go upstairs and write it. I will bring you a sandwich at 9. Elara went upstairs and wrote it. She wrote for 14 hours. She wrote a 50-page diplomatic brief in plain English, with 3 appendices and 4 cross-referenced linguistic charts. She delivered it to Eleanor at 7 the next morning. Eleanor put it in a manila envelope and drove it to the post office and overnighted it to a woman named Helen in Washington. 3 days later, there was a hostage situation. 12 Luminarian colonists, a Vossari boarding party, a standoff on a small mining world that nobody had ever heard of before that week. 3 days after that, the standoff ended. The hostages walked out alive. A Vossari elder spoke in halting Galactic on the news. He said, "We are heard." Elara watched it in the kitchen with Eleanor. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Eleanor reached over and held her hand. Inconvenient, she said quietly. Not useless. Get it right. Do not ever get it wrong again. The phone rang on a Sunday. Eleanor answered. She listened. Her face changed. She handed the phone to Reed. Reed listened. His face changed. He hung up. Mom, Elara, sit down. They sat. War Master Ronan Draven is coming to Earth. Tomorrow. Officially as a Luminarian envoy. He is here to register his protest about the marriage. And... Reed hesitated. And about Elara. What about me? He has heard. About the Vosari brief. He has heard. Half the galaxy has heard Elara. Helen took the brief to the Secretary of State. The Secretary took it to the President. The President mentioned it in a closed session. The closed session leaked. The Luminarian ambassador got a copy. The Luminarian ambassador sent it to your father. Your father showed it to the War Council. Elara felt the floor tilt. Reed, it is not bad news. It is not. It is complicated news. Your father has not made a public statement, but War Master Ronan is coming, personally. Reed swallowed. To assess. Assess what? You! Elara closed her eyes. Ronan arrived on a gray Wednesday. He came to the house alone. That surprised Reed. The War Master of all Luminaria. No retinue, no bodyguards. Just one tall, pale-skinned old warrior in dark traveling robes, climbing out of an Earth diplomatic car at the edge of Eleanor's driveway, and walking up the gravel path with his hands folded in front of him, like a man going to a funeral. Reed met him at the porch. War Master. Sergeant Holloway. You came alone. I did not want witnesses. For what? For this conversation. Reed stepped aside. Eleanor served them tea in the living room. She did not stay. She had a sense for these things. She kissed Elara on the forehead and took her gardening gloves and out to the backyard and left the men to it. Elara sat in the doorway, half in, half out. Ronan looked at her. He did not bow. He did not insult her. He just looked at her. Princess. War Master. I read your brief. Yes. All of it. Yes. He turned to Reed. I have come to say a thing I have not said in 9 years. Okay. I do not want a conversation about my position. I want a conversation about my son. Reed set down his cup. Your son. My son. Torin Dreven. He was 23 years old. He was the only child. He fell in the Belt Campaign 9 years ago this winter. I am sorry. He fell because... Ronan stopped. He started again. He fell because he was trying a tactic that was not Luminarian. He had read. He had been reading. A book. Reed said nothing. He had been reading about Earth military history, about a man called Sun Tzu. He had been thinking. He had wanted to talk to me about it. He thought our straight-line attacks were predictable. He thought we should fight more like Earth fights, with deception, with angles, with the wind at our back. Ronan's hands were trembling. He set down his cup so it would not rattle. I told him no. I told him the old ways were the honorable ways. I told him to stop reading books that would make him weak. I told him to put away the Sun Tzu and pick up his sword. War Master. He went into the Belt Campaign with my words in his ears. He fought the old way, because his father had ordered him to. He fought a straight line into an enemy that was waiting for him in 7 angles. The room was very still. He died because I would not let him think. Reed did not speak. For 9 years I have told myself the universe killed him. I have told myself the enemy killed him. I have told myself it was war, and war is war. And then 6 months ago a human won the Crimson Nebula with the same tactics my son wanted to use. And then last month, a Luminarian princess saved a hostage situation with the same kind of thinking my son had. And he stopped. He could not go on. He sat in Eleanor Holloway's good chair, and he could not go on. Elara stood up from the doorway. She walked across the room. She knelt next to him, ink-stained fingers on the arm of the chair. War Master. He could not look at her. War Master Ronan. He looked at her. I would have liked your son. From what you say, I would have liked him very much. His face crumpled. Elara put her hand on his. She did not say anything else. Some things did not need more words. The next day, Ronan went back to Luminaria. He did not say what he would report. He just looked at Elara before he left, and he said, "You write a great deal, Princess." "Yes. Keep writing." That was all. A week later, the Emperor's message came. It came through diplomatic channels at 4 a.m. Earth time. Reed was the one who saw it first because Reed had not been sleeping well. He read it twice. He read it 3 times. Then he went and woke up his mother. "Mom, I am awake. I need you." Eleanor put on her robe. Eleanor came downstairs. Eleanor read the message. Eleanor sat down very slowly. "Oh, sweetheart. What do I do?" "You do not do anything yet. We tell her together, after breakfast. Not before." "Mom." "After breakfast, Reed. The girl gets one more peaceful breakfast in this house. Then we tell her." They told her at the kitchen table. Toast. Eggs. The coffee pot half full. Elara in Eleanor's old sweater again, because she had taken to wearing it most mornings. Her hair pulled into a soft knot at the back of her head with one of Eleanor's tortoiseshell clips. Reed put the message in front of her. She read it. She read it again. Her voice was very flat. "He demands my return." "Yes." "Alone." "Yes." "To stand before the High Council. To submit to a public dissolution of the marriage." "Yes." "Or he disowns me and withdraws Luminarian support from the alliance." "Yes." She set the message down. She picked up her coffee cup. She drank from it. She set it back down. She looked at Eleanor. She looked at Reed. She looked out the window at the apple trees. "I will go." "Elara." "I will go, Reed. The alliance matters more than my feelings. I have done well here. I have done what I could. But if the price of my marriage is the alliance breaking, then I cannot pay that price. I would not be able to live with myself. You are not going alone. Reed, you are not going alone. Reed." "Elara, listen to me. Listen to me carefully. I chose you in that throne room. I chose you. And choosing means you don't stop choosing when it gets hard. That is the whole point of the word. If I let you walk back into that room by yourself, I never chose you. I just picked you. There is a difference." She was crying. "They will hurt you." "Maybe. They will hurt you, Reed, the War Master. Even with what he said. He cannot protect you in that council. There are people who will want you dead. There are people who will demand it as a satisfaction to Luminarian honor. They could. Maybe. Read. I am coming. Read. I am coming, Elara. End of conversation. Eleanor stood up. She walked around the table. She sat down in the chair next to Elara. She took Elara's hand in both of hers. Honey, look at me. Elara looked. I want you to listen to me. I want you to listen very carefully. Are you listening? Yes. You are my daughter. From this moment forward, you are my daughter. Do you understand? Eleanor, do you understand? Yes. Whatever happens on Luminaria, whatever they decide, whatever they say, you are my daughter. And this house, this little house with the apple trees and the rose garden, and Reed's father's books still on the shelves 9 years after he passed, this house will always have a room for you. Are you hearing me? Elara could not speak. Are you hearing me, sweetheart? Yes. You come home to me. Whatever happens, you come home to me. Even if it is alone, even if it is in pieces, you come home. The door is not going to be locked. The light is going to be on. There is going to be soup on the stove. Do you understand? Yes. Say it back to me. Elara was crying so hard she could barely get the words. I come home to you. Whatever happens. Whatever happens. You are my daughter. I am your daughter. Eleanor took her face in both hands. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. She kissed Elara's forehead. She held her for a long time. Reed stood by the window with his hand over his mouth. Outside it had started to rain. A soft September rain. The kind of rain that meant the apples were almost done. The kind of rain that smelled like the year turning. The roses in the back garden bent under the weight of the water. Madame Hardy held her head up. Tough old girl. Elara sat in Eleanor's kitchen with her face in Eleanor's hands, and she thought, I have a mother. I have a mother for the first time in 19 years. And tomorrow morning I'm going to a planet to lose my whole life. But I have a mother, and whatever happens, I have a mother. I have a mother. I have a mother. The rain kept falling. Eleanor kept holding her. Reed did not move from the window. And somewhere far away, an old emperor sat alone in a throne room the color of a bruise, and waited, and did not know that he was the one who was about to lose. Part 3. The ship that took them back to Luminaria was not the USS Liberty. It was a Luminarian envoy vessel. Silver-hulled. Sharp. Cold. The air inside smelled like nothing. Luminarian ships did not have smells. Luminarian ships had been built to feel like the inside of a sword. Elara hated it the moment she stepped aboard. Reed did not say anything. He just walked behind her. He had been walking 3 steps behind her since the airfield. He had been walking 3 steps behind her because she had asked him to. She had not explained why. He had not asked. Because that was Reed. That was who he was. That was what she had chosen too. Not just the man with the book. Not just the soldier in the throne room. The man who could walk 3 steps behind a woman who was scared and not need to be told he was loved for it. She wore her old Luminarian colors. Cream, white, pale silver thread along the cuffs. Eleanor had pressed the dress that morning. Eleanor had pressed it and folded it and tucked a small handkerchief into the pocket. The handkerchief had Eleanor's grandmother's initials embroidered in one corner. ELH. For luck. Eleanor had said, and in case you need to blow your nose, do not lose it. Elara had not lost it. She kept her hand in that pocket the whole flight. She kept her thumb on the embroidered letters. She did not let go. They landed at the Imperial spaceport at the gray hour before dawn. No honor guard met them. That was the first signal. No herald, no music, no Imperial banner unfurled. Just 6 soldiers in plain dark armor and a closed black ground car waiting on the tarmac like a thing that wanted to swallow them. Reed saw it. Reed moved closer. 3 steps, she said quietly. Elara. 3 steps, Reed. Please, I need to walk in there like I am not afraid. You are not afraid. I am terrified. Then walk like the terrified person who is walking in there anyway. She looked at him. Is that a thing humans say? It is now. She almost smiled. The car ride was long. She watched the city pass. Luminaria at dawn was the color of an old bruise that had decided to be beautiful about it. Spires, towers, the arc of the Imperial garden domes, banners flickering on the wind. She had grown up looking at this skyline from inside it. Now she was looking at it from inside this car. It was different. The city looked smaller than she remembered. She wondered if everything looked smaller after Earth. Then she wondered if it was just that she was bigger now. Then she wondered if those were the same sentence. Then she made herself stop wondering. Because she was about to walk into a room full of people who wanted her gone, and she needed to be calm, and wondering was the opposite of calm. She put her hand back in her pocket, her thumb, her grandmother-in-law's initials, 3 letters that belonged to a woman she had never met. The mother of the mother of the man whose son had chosen her. She breathed out. She was ready. The Grand Assembly Hall held thousands. That morning it held all of them. Luminarian leaders from every clan world. Warriors in full ceremonial armor. Nobles in robes the color of bone and burnished bronze. Diplomats. Provincial governors. The high priests of the 8 orders. The military council in its semicircle of black thrones. Every single one of them watching the small white-haired woman walk down the central aisle in a cream dress that did not match anything in the room. At the far end, on the high dais, sat Emperor Kalon. Beside him in armor stood Princess Seraphine, and Princess Valis, and Princess Lyson. 3 columns of polished light, and at the foot of the dais at the speaker's stone stood War Master Ronan Dreven. He did not look at her. That hurt more than she had expected, after what they had said in Eleanor's living room, after the hand he had laid over hers. She had thought. She had thought. He did not look at her. Maybe that was for show. Maybe that was politics. Maybe he could not afford to look at her in front of all these people without being torn apart by them. Maybe. Maybe. She had to stop maybeing. Reed stopped at the edge of the speaker's stone. He could not stand on it. Only Luminarians could stand on the speaker's stone. He stood as close as the law allowed. He met her eyes. He nodded once. She stepped up onto the stone. She faced her father. The hall fell quiet. Daughter. Father. You have come. I have come. Alone. With the human at my side. That is not what I asked. That is what you got. A murmur ran through the hall. The Emperor did not react. He had not been spoken back to in many years. He blinked. Once. Slowly. the way old reptiles blink. You have read the terms. I have. Speak to the dissolution of this marriage. She opened her mouth. She was going to say it. She had practiced it on the ship. She had practiced it twice in the car. She had practiced it once more in her own head as she walked down the aisle. She was going to say, I cannot dissolve a marriage. I was not free to enter freely in the first place. I am here as a daughter and as a citizen and as a woman who has lived 12 years invisible and 3 months seen. I am here to ask my father if there is room in this empire for a daughter who reads. She was going to say it. She opened her mouth. The sirens started. A long, low wailing note, then a second, higher, sharper, then a third. Then all the lights in the assembly hall changed color from white to red and stayed red. Imperial Defense Alert. 3 sirens. 3 sirens meant a planetary breach. 3 sirens meant the planetary shield was already failing. 3 sirens meant somebody had punched a hole in Luminaria's sky. Reed's hand went to his hip out of pure reflex and found nothing. Of course he had no weapon. Of course, he was a foreign soldier in the heart of the imperial capital during a treason hearing. They had not let him in armed. His hand made a fist instead. A general broke from the war council and ran to the emperor's side. He whispered. He whispered fast. The emperor's face did not move. Vossari, he said. The hall went still. Vossari fleet. Dozens of ships, already past the 3rd defense ring. They came in through the radiation shadow of the moon. We did not see them until they were already inside our outer guns. A captain shouted from the far side of the chamber. How long until they reach the capital? The general answered. His voice was tight. Less than half an hour. A roar of voices. Officers shouting orders. Nobles backing toward the doors. The high priests already moving in a tight knot toward the deep shelter beneath the central altar. Princess Seraphine had drawn her sword without thinking about it. Princess Valus had her daggers in her hands. Princess Listen was unstringing her bow. Less than half an hour. Luminaria had never lost the capital. Not in 800 years. Not since the founding. Less than half an hour. Elara stood very still on the speaker's stone. The world had narrowed. The world had gone small and sharp and crystal clear. She knew this attack. She had written about this attack. She had written about it 4 years ago. The Vossari ritual of the final petition. When all other communication failed. When the Vossari believed they had been ignored beyond endurance. They would gather their fleet and make the longest possible journey to the homeworld of the offending civilization. And they would knock on the door of the throne room itself. Not invasion. Petition. Loud and terrible petition. The petition of last resort. The petition that said, "You have not listened to us. Anywhere else, we are coming to your house. We are knocking on your house with everything we have. And if you do not open the door, we will keep knocking until you do, or until we die." She turned to her father. "Father." "Daughter, not now." "Father, yes, now. Let me speak to them." "What?" "Let me speak to them. Open a direct channel from this hall to their flagship. Patch it through the speaker's stone. Let me speak to them. I know what they want. I have known what they want for years." The emperor stared at her. For 1 second, she could see in his face the war he had spent her whole life fighting. The war between the man who had ignored her and the man who had read her brief on the Vossari and known. The war between the warrior who could not believe a daughter who could not fight could possibly save anything, and the father who. She did not have time to think about which side won. He turned to the general. "Patch her in." "Your Majesty." "Patch her in." The general moved. A communications officer weathered the speaker's stone with a portable rig. He set it up. A hollow screen flickered to life beside her. The screen showed the Vossari flagship, wedge-shaped, asymmetric, engines glowing wrong color. On the bridge of that ship stood a being she had never seen in person, but had drawn from textual descriptions 100 times. Tall, 6-limbed, skin the color of old copper, eyes deep set under a heavy ridge of bone. The Vossari fleet commander, a first petitioner. He saw her on his own screen. He froze, because he had not expected a small, white-haired woman in a cream dress. He had expected an emperor in armor. He had not expected this. Elara opened her mouth. She did not speak in Luminarian. She did not speak in Galactic. She spoke in Vossari. She spoke the high formal mode, the one that had not been used outside the Vossari homeworld in 2 centuries. The one she had reconstructed from fragmentary trade contracts and a lost Corin Merchant Guild's records. The one no living non-Vossari was supposed to know. She said, "I hear you knocking. I have heard you knocking for a long time. I am so sorry. It took us so long to open the door." The first petitioner stood frozen. His mouth opened. A bridge officer behind him stepped backward. The entire Vossari command deck stopped moving. Elara kept speaking. "You have come to make the final petition. You have come because the contested territories at the Outer Rim are not contested. They are yours. You have buried your ancestors on those moons since before our empire existed. You have left your dead in those moons. And we built mining colonies on your dead, and we did not know we had done it. And when you tried to tell us, we did not listen, and so you have come here. Because petitioners always come when no one will listen." A silence so deep, the holorig hummed. The first petitioner spoke. His voice was hoarse. "How do you know our speech?" "I read." "You read?" "Yes." "Who taught you?" "No one taught me. I learned alone. From a dead merchant's papers in the Imperial Archives. How long have you known we were coming?" 4 years. 4 years. I tried to tell them. I am not someone they listen to. He looked at her for a long moment. She did not break the look. "What do you offer?" he said. "I offer the moons returned, the bones honored, a joint ceremony at the great burial fields of Vethka. The first ceremony in 300 years, where Luminarian and Vossari priests stand together. I offer the formal recognition of the final petition as heard. I offer to keep listening." He blinked. "To keep listening?" "Yes." "Princess, are you authorized to offer these things?" She did not look at her father. She did not need to. "I am authorized." She heard the Emperor exhale behind her. She heard him breathe out slow. She heard him not contradict her. That was the answer. That was the answer she had needed. He had given it without a word. The first petitioner studied her. Then he did a thing Vossari almost never did to non-Vossari. He bent his head forward. The Vossari bow. The bow given only to those who had spoken the petition language with honor. Princess. First petitioner. My fleet stands down at the 3rd defense ring. We will receive your terms in writing within the day. We will negotiate the ceremony at Vethka through formal channels. The screen went dark. Outside in the sky above the capital, the wedge-shaped ships slowed, turned, held position, did not advance, did not retreat, waited, like petitioners who had finally been heard. The assembly hall was so quiet that the sound of the hollow rig cooling down was the loudest thing in the building. Elara stepped off the speaker's stone. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were shaking. Her teeth were shaking. She had used every ounce of her body to hold itself still while she was speaking, and now her body was making her pay for it. Reed caught her elbow. She did not fall. She did not fall. She turned. She faced the hall. Thousands of people. Silent. Staring, she did not say anything. She just stood. White-haired, cream dress, ink-stained fingers. 22 years old. Daughter of a dead mother. Daughter of a father who had not looked at her since she was 10. Sister of 3 warriors. Reader of many languages. Writer of 400 pages. Wife of a soldier who had seen her once across a throne room. She just stood. The first sound in the hall was Princess Seraphine. She stepped down from the dais. She walked across the floor. She walked through the silent, staring nobles. She did not stop walking until she was in front of Elara. She did not kneel. She bowed. The Luminarian warrior bow. The deep one, forehead toward the floor. The hall began to move, one by one, then by tens, then by hundreds. The warriors of the assembly hall bowed to the white-haired princess in the cream dress. The emperor did not bow. The emperor did not move at all. His face was wet. She saw it from across the chamber. She had not seen it. She did not know how she saw it. But she saw it. The Emperor of Luminaria was crying without making a sound. He turned away. He walked off the dais through a small side door at the back, alone. Vilas and Lyson looked at each other, looked at Elara, looked at the side door. Neither of them followed him. They knew. They had grown up watching him. They knew. He needed to be alone. The capital did not get destroyed that day. The capital got something it had never had in 800 years. A pause, a long-held breath, a waiting room. 3 days passed. 3 days of negotiations. 3 days of writing. 3 days of Elara sleeping 4 hours a night and waking up to write more. The Vossari sent their formal terms. She translated them. She drafted Luminarian responses. The Imperial Diplomatic Service did not know what to do with her, so they did what people had been doing to her whole life. They worked around her. Except this time, they worked around her in a different direction. This time, they put her at the center and worked around her like spokes around a wheel. Reed did not leave her side. He brought her food. He brought her tea. He read what she wrote and asked good questions in the margins. He slept on a small couch in her writing room. He held her hand once at 3 a.m, when her fingers were cramping from writing too long, and he said nothing, and she said nothing, and that was enough. War Master Ronan was not seen. For 3 days, he did not appear at the War Council. He did not appear at the Imperial briefings. His staff said he was attending to private matters. His staff would not say which. Elara understood. She understood the way you understand silence when you have lived inside silence yourself. He needed time. She did not push. On the 4th night he came to her. It was late. She was at her desk. Her writing room was on the 3rd floor of the East Wing, in a small set of rooms that had been her old quarters and were now her quarters again, except that the door was guarded by Imperial honor guards who saluted her every time she walked past. That was new. She had not gotten used to it. The knock was very soft. She thought it was Reed. She said, "Come in," without turning around. The door opened. It closed. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Not Reed. She turned. War Master Ronan Dreven stood in her doorway. He wore no armor. He wore a plain dark robe. He had not slept well. He had not slept at all, maybe. His face was the face of a man who had spent 3 days arguing with the dead. "War Master. Princess. Please, sit." "I will not sit." "Then I will stand." She stood up. He came into the room. He stopped in front of her desk. He took something from inside the breast of his robe. He laid it on her desk. A small, dark velvet box. She did not touch it. She looked at him. "Open it," he said. She opened it. Inside, a medal. Old. Heavy. Luminarian. The Order of the Crimson Star. The highest military honor in the Empire. The one given for valor in the Belt Campaign. She knew the name on the back without reading it. Torin Draven. She looked up at the War Master. She did not know what to say. "I cannot give my son back his book," he said quietly. "I cannot give him back the conversation we did not have. But the medal." He stopped. "The medal is the part of him the Empire chose to remember. The part that wore a sword and ran in a straight line. That is not the part of him that I want remembered." He looked at her. "Keep it." "I cannot." "Keep it, Princess. You said you would have liked my son. From what I told you. You said you would have liked him very much. Keep this for him. Because what you did 3 days ago, the way you did it, that is the way he would have wanted to fight. With words, with patience, with the wind at your back. War Master. Keep it." She closed her hand around the medal. It was very heavy. He bowed. Not a polite bow. The deep bow. The same bow Seraphine had given her in the hall. "You honored my son 3 days ago, before you ever knew his name." He left. He did not look back. She sat down very slowly on the edge of her writing chair. She held the medal in her ink-stained hand. She thought. Torin Dreven. Torin Dreven. I do not know what you looked like. I do not know what your voice sounded like. I do not know what your favorite color was. I do not know if you laughed easily. I do not know if you were afraid the day you went into the belt. But I know you read. I know you read, and your father burned the book. I know you wanted to think, and your father would not let you. And I know that wherever you are now, wherever Luminarian souls go when they are taken too young, I hope you know. I hope you know somebody finally read you. I hope you know your father has finally heard you. I hope you know. She cried for a long time. She did not wipe her face. She kept the medal in her hand. Reed found her like that an hour later and did not ask. He just sat next to her on the floor and put his head on her knee and let her cry over him until her crying was done. The Emperor sent for her 2 days after that. A page came to her door. He bowed. He delivered the summons. He bowed again. He left. She read the summons 3 times. Then she went to her closet. She put on her cream dress. She put Eleanor's grandmother's handkerchief in her pocket. She put Torrin Draven's medal around her neck, on a thin silver chain, where everyone could see it, where her father would see it. She walked down the corridor. Reed did not come with her. She had asked him not to. This part she had to do alone. The Emperor's private chambers were not in the Imperial wing. They were in the South Tower. Almost nobody went to the South Tower. The South Tower had been built 4 centuries ago by an empress who had loved to look at storms. The top floor was a single round room with windows on all sides. Her father had moved into that room 19 years ago, after Elara's mother had died. He had never come back down. Not really. He had ruled from the Imperial wing during the days. He had slept and lived and grieved up here. Elara had not been inside this room since she was 3 years old. She did not remember being inside it, but she remembered standing outside the door at the bottom of the tower stairs. She remembered being 5 years old and asking a nurse why her father lived up there. She remembered the nurse saying, "Because that is where your father goes to be sad." She climbed the stairs, 120 steps. At the top, a small door. Wooden. Old. It opened before she knocked. The Emperor stood in the doorway. He was not in his robes of state. He wore a plain gray house tunic. His hair was not combed. He looked old. He had never let himself look his age in public. He looked it now. "Daughter." "Father." "Come in." She came in. The room was not what she had imagined. It was full of light. The wraparound windows held the city and the sky in a great pale ring. There was a chair by the window with a blanket folded on it. A small wooden writing desk with letters stacked neatly on its corner. A bookshelf. A real bookshelf. With books on it. Luminarian books. Some old, some new. He had been reading. He had been reading. He saw her see the shelf. He did not explain. He walked instead to the writing desk. He opened a small drawer. He took out a thing wrapped in cream silk. He turned to her. He held it out. She walked across the room. She took it. She unwrapped the silk. Inside, a small flat frame. Handheld. Old. A photo. A real photo. Not a hollow. A flat printed photograph of a kind the Empire had not used in 20 years. A woman, pale, white-haired, white-skinned, gray-silver eyes, small, slight, smiling at the camera with the corner of her mouth, ink-stained fingers held loosely in her lap. Elara stopped breathing. She knew this woman. She had never met this woman. She had never met this woman because this woman had died when she was 3 years old, and there were no records of her preserved in the Imperial Archive that Elara had ever been allowed to see. Her mother. Her mother. She had not known. She had not known they looked alike. She had not known her ink-stained fingers were her mother's ink-stained fingers. She had not known she was wearing her mother's smile. She looked up at her father. His hand was trembling. the hand that had just given her the silk. He had folded it back against his chest, and it was trembling. "She wrote," he said. "Father." She wrote Elara, all the time. Letters, poems, essays. She wrote about everything. The birds outside the South Tower, the arguments she lost in the imperial court, the way light fell on the floor in winter. She wrote and wrote. She kept it all in a small wooden box. He stopped. He could not go on. He went on anyway. She was sick for the last year of her life. The last 6 months, she could only sit up for a few hours a day. She kept writing. She would not stop writing. I said to her once, "Why do you keep going? You are tired. Rest." And she said, "Kalon, I am leaving her my voice. If I cannot stay, I am leaving her my voice." Elara was crying. She did not feel herself crying. She just was. "You were 3, he said. When she died, you were 3. You sat in her bed, and you watched her stop breathing, and then you stopped speaking. For 4 months. Do you remember?" "No, I remember." His voice cracked. I remember every day of those 4 months. I remember holding you in this room, and you would not look at me. I remember begging you to speak. I remember. He could not say what he remembered. He did not need to. "And when you spoke again," he said, "when you finally spoke again, you looked at me, and you had her eyes, and you had her hands, and you, daughter, you were her. You were her come back. And I could not. I could not. Father, I could not look at you." He sat down, heavily, on the chair by the window. He did not look at her. "I am a coward. I am a coward of the worst kind. I have been a warrior all my life, and I am a coward of the worst kind. I could not look at the daughter who looked exactly like the wife I lost. So I looked away. For 19 years. I looked away. And I told myself it was because you were weak. I told myself it was because you were not a warrior. I told myself 1,000 lies because the truth was that I could not bear to look at you, because every time I looked at you, I lost her again. And it was easier to call you useless than to feel that. Every day." He was not crying. He was past crying. He was at the place men go after crying, the dry, quiet place that has no name. "I have wasted 19 years of your life," he said, "because I could not stand my own grief. I made you pay for my grief. I let the Empire call you useless because I could not say to them, 'She is not useless. I am broken.'" Elara walked across the room. She walked across the room very slowly. She knelt down beside her father's chair. She did not touch him. She just knelt there, with the photograph of her mother in one hand, and Torin Draven's medal hanging at her throat, and her ink-stained fingers, and her tear-stained face. And she looked at him until he looked at her. He looked at her. He looked at her for the first time in 19 years. He looked at her, and he did not look away. "I have her smile," she said. "You do. You see her in me." "I do. I am not her father. I am her daughter. There is a difference." "I know. I would like to know about her. I would like to know my mother. Even if it hurts. Even if it hurts every time." "Will you tell me about her?" He could not speak. He nodded. He nodded for a long time. The way old men nod when their voices have left them. He reached out his hand. He placed his hand on her shoulder. His old scarred warrior's hand, on the shoulder of her cream dress. He squeezed once. Light. Real. It was the first time her father had touched her since she was 3 years old. She closed her eyes. She put her own hand over his. She held it there. For a long time. The light moved across the floor. The afternoon came. The afternoon went. Neither of them moved. It was almost evening when she walked back down the 120 steps. She had the photograph in her hand. She had her mother's voice in her chest. She had a father at the top of a tower who was still up there, but who would tomorrow come down. For the first time in 19 years. He had promised. She had asked. He had said yes. Reed was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He did not ask. He looked at her face. He saw what was there. He opened his arms. She walked into them. She did not cry. She had cried enough for one day. She was not sure she had any tears left in her body. She just leaned against his chest, and she put her ear against the place where his heart was, and she listened to it. Beat. 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 A human heart. From Pennsylvania. From a man who had walked into a Luminarian throne room with a dead friend's book in his pocket and chosen a princess that nobody else wanted. Beat. 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 The most precious sound in the universe. She stayed there a long time, 3 weeks later. By the time the Vermont maples had begun to turn gold and the first crisp mornings had arrived, the wedding happened. Of course it happened in Vermont. Elara had asked. She had said, "Father, I do not want to be married in the throne room," he had said. "Where would you like to be married?" she had said. "In a garden, with apple trees, with a woman I love standing on one side of me and a man I love standing on the other side. And nobody who looks at me as if I am a political event," he had said. "Then that is where you will be married." He had sent Imperial Diplomatic Vessel No. 7 to Vermont. He had ridden in it dead himself. He had been off Luminaria one time before decades ago when he was a young prince attending a treaty signing. He had not enjoyed it. He had been afraid of being away from home this whole flight. He had not said so. Elara had known. She had sat with him on the flight. She had told him about Earth. She had told him about apple pies. She had told him about Eleanor. He had listened. He had asked questions. He had asked questions like a man who had been silent for 19 years and was suddenly remembering how to use his mouth. When the ship landed in Vermont, when the ramp came down, when Eleanor Holloway was standing there at the edge of the runway in a long blue coat with her hands folded. The Emperor of Luminaria walked down the ramp first. He walked across the runway. He stopped in front of Eleanor. He bowed, the deep bow, the Luminarian warrior bow, to a 62-year-old human widow in a blue coat who smelled like lavender and old books. "Madame Holloway, Your Majesty, you have been a mother to my daughter. When I could not be a father, I owe you a debt I cannot pay. I came down here to tell you that, before I do anything else." Eleanor looked at him. For one long second she looked at him. Then she did something simple and very Eleanor. She reached out and took his hand. Just took it. The way you take the hand of a friend who has had a long day. The way you take the hand of a man who has been alone too long in a tower. The Emperor of Luminaria, ruler of 70 worlds, holder of the Crimson Crown, master of 200 legions, looked down at the small, wrinkled human hand holding his. He did not pull away. You came, Eleanor said quietly. That is what matters. Late is better than never. I should know. I was late to plenty of things in my life. The good ones still happened. He could not speak. She did not need him to. There is pie inside. Come on. The neighbors are dying to meet you. You look like you have not slept in a week. She did not let go of his hand. She walked him across the runway. She walked him into her house. The wedding was small. The imperial entourage stayed in the field. The emperor walked into the garden alone. Princess Seraphine wore a soft white dress. She had taken off her armor. She had brushed out her hair. She had held a small bouquet of roses she had cut from Eleanor's garden that morning with her own warrior hands. Eleanor had taught her how to cut roses. Seraphine had cut 3. She had pricked her thumb. She had laughed. She had laughed. Princess Seraphine of Luminaria, conqueror of the Drathan worlds, veteran of 12 campaigns, holder of the silver lance, standing in a Vermont rose garden laughing at a thumbprick. Princess Valus stood beside her. Princess Lyson stood beside Valus. All 4 sisters in white. The first time in their lives. All 4 together. Smiling. Elara walked down the aisle. Reed had built her out of pine boughs. She wore a white dress, not a wedding dress. A simple white dress Eleanor had picked from her own closet and altered for her. It had been Eleanor's many years ago when Eleanor was small enough to fit into it. It still smelled faintly of lavender. Eleanor had insisted on lavender. She walked. Her father stood at her left. Eleanor stood at her right. The 2 of them walked her down the aisle together. A father from one planet, a mother from another. Both of them holding her arms. Both of them looking straight ahead at the same man. Reed Halloway stood at the end of the aisle. He was crying. He did not even try to hide it. He had a small, worn book in his hand. Wesley Tate's Odyssey. He had said he would give it to her at the end of the ceremony. He had said it was for both of them now. He had said Wesley would want it that way. She reached the end of the aisle. Her father kissed her forehead. Her mother kissed her cheek. She took Reed's hand. The minister spoke. Vows were said. They were short. They were so short, he said. I will read with you, she said. I will read with you, he said. Even the long passages. She said. Even the long passages, he said. Even the hard ones. She said. Especially the hard ones. That was the whole vow. That was the whole wedding. The rings were rings Eleanor had given them. They had been her own mother's rings, plain gold, worn thin on the inside from 60 years of marriage that had been longer and harder and better than people thought. He put one on Elara, she put one on him. They kissed. The garden cheered. Not loudly. There were not many people in the garden, but it was the right kind of cheering, the kind that happens when small good things happen in front of small numbers of people who love them. Afterward, after the toast, after the cake, after the Emperor of Luminaria asked Eleanor's neighbor if she would teach him to make pie. Eleanor and Elara sat alone in the back garden under the largest of the apple trees. The sun was going down. A pale gold light was coming in flat across the rose bushes. Madame Hardy was holding her head up. She always did. Eleanor had her knitting in her lap. She had given Elara a second set of needles. She had said, I am going to teach you to knit. Tonight. Whether you want me to or not. Elara had said. I want you to. They sat side by side. Eleanor showed her the loop, the pull-through, the slip. Elara's ink-stained fingers struggled with the yarn. She laughed. Eleanor laughed. Sweetheart, honey, you are making it harder than it has to be. Loose hands. Let it happen. My hands have never made anything that was not writing. Then this is the second thing your hands have ever made. What am I making? A scarf. For who? For whoever needs it. We will figure it out later. Knitting is not really about who it is for at the start. It is about the doing. You learn who it is for as you go. You will know by the time it is done. Elara nodded. She kept knitting. The light got softer. The rose garden filled with the deep gold of the year turning. She thought, I am 22 years old. I am 22 years old, and I am sitting in a garden in Vermont, and my mother is teaching me to knit, and my husband is inside the house teaching my father how to use a coffee maker, and my sister is somewhere learning how to laugh again, and a war master I once feared has put his son's medal around my neck, and a Vosari fleet is sitting at the edge of my home planet, waiting patiently for a joint burial ceremony. I am 22 years old, and I have been seen. Once, by a soldier with a book, and then again, by a mother with a coat, and then again, by a sister with a sword, and then again, by a war master with a medal, and then again, by a father with a photograph. I have been seen 5 times, after 22 years of not being seen at all. 5 is a lot. 5 is so many. 5 is the rest of my life. Eleanor. Yes, sweetheart. Thank you. You do not have to. I do. Then you are welcome. A pause. Eleanor. Yes. Will you sit out here a little longer? As long as you want. Honey, I am 62 years old. I have nowhere to be. Ever. Again, for the rest of my life. I am exactly where I want to be. Elara kept knitting. Eleanor kept knitting. The light went down slowly. Inside the house, Reed stood at the window. He saw them. He did not call them in. He let them have it. He had Wesley's Odyssey in his hand. He held it against his chest. He thought, she found her people, Wes. She found her people. You would have liked her. He smiled. The light on the rose garden went from gold to rose to a deep purple that the Luminarians did not know existed. The first stars came out. Vermont stars. Soft, small, familiar. The scarf grew under Elara's ink-stained fingers. She would finish it in 3 days. She would give it to her father. He would wear it every day for the rest of his life. But that was 3 days from now. Tonight, there were just 2 women under an apple tree, a mother and her daughter, knitting until it got dark.